Welcome, Summoners of the Rift, to episode number 95 of the Broken by Concept podcast, the number one podcast in solo queue improvement for the game, the indie game League of Legends.
Very independent.
Where should we start exploring the
We're
solo
a day late,
queue
Nathan,
experience?
so apologise, Rob.
Yeah, we
viewers.
are.
We need to apologise.
Yeah,
Easter weekend, family commitments, etc.
Yeah,
couldn't get around it, so we're a day late.
we are a day late. There was people quite upset about
Yep.
that.
There was a protest outside your apartment and my apartment simultaneously.
Broken by Concept.
Waking up our entire
Where is our
apartment.
podcast? Where is our podcast?
Pitchforks and everything.
So where should we start on our solo queue journey today, Curtis? Because we love solo queue so much.
I want to gank you here quickly.
God, I'm getting
because
ganked.
you've got Will, your number one client that you've worked with
Oh God.
for a long time.
Yeah.
And he's obviously, you made it very vocal. He's trying to go pro.
Yeah.
He's trying to make it into the scene, etc. And, you know, I've got a few people in the MLA that also are trying to go pro. I think there's like a handful, probably. I think there's like 3, 4 that are genuinely trying to go pro. And a common question I get is, you know, how do they kind of balance League in their life with mental refreshing in a way? Because, you know, obviously, you know, we've spoken about schedules. They've got great schedules. So they're ticking all the boxes. They're doing like splitting their days up, getting their exercise in.
Exercise, that's the most
They're doing all that, right?
Yep.
But then
3 block
you know,
rows.
how do you then, what would your advice be to say someone pursuing pro when it comes to like a weekend? Do they have a day off a week? Do they take a morning off and maybe do 1 3 block on a Saturday instead? Do they have a social life at all? How do they balance social life with that? Like, what would your, and I really struggle to like, I don't know how to answer this, because on one side, I believe that you do need some form of recovery in there, but also at the same time, I don't believe in balance when it comes to going pro in a game like League or any elite sport. So what's your take on this, Nathan? What advice would you give?
I am in the ballpark with you. I don't know. I can't give advice because I think it varies from person to person.
Right.
Let's say if I want to be pro, I would probably not be taking any breaks, anything like that. You know, like break that whole break day. Maybe like throughout the day, you know, the exercise is a bit of a break and stuff. I mean, it's just personally what I would do. Like if I was to go back, it's like I'd still be playing the game, loving the game every day. Especially if you're a young kid, you should be you have to be living and breathing it, obviously.
And what would you say to Will? Has he ever like had periods where he's felt burnt?
Yeah.
And what does he do?
Yeah. You just push through the pain barrier, yeah.
So he doesn't take days
No,
off?
he does. He definitely... Well, with his school schedule, because he's high school as well.
Yeah.
So he just has days where he's doing homework and stuff. He just gets no
So he doesn't
games
play the
in.
game at all?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I think that was just by circumstance, like just the nature of school and your schedule and outside activities, like he plays basketball and stuff,
Right,
you know?
okay.
I don't think that's like a conscious effort thing, you know?
But in a way, you think you might coincidentally
But it could
be
be
healthy.
healthy, yeah, that's right.
Right, because he has a barrier or like
But when
some
he
gap.
leaves high school, it'll be very interesting
That'd be
to
interesting,
see.
yeah.
That's the question, right? What will look like, what the discipline will be, how
Yeah,
long
I just kind of want to raise that, and I think it's something we need to think about more, because I just genuinely
I don't know,
know
like
how to answer it.
I think that question in general. So what's your question is
like, how do you unwind?
how do you unwind?
And how do you, because, okay, so basically one of them, I won't say his name, said something along the lines of, look, you know, I'm willing to give everything, and he does give everything. He's made a lot of sacrifices. He puts in like the time. He's got the schedule. He's doing it all, right? And then he said, like, so, but I can feel sometimes like quite exhausted, and especially when it comes to like, I've been grinding for days and days and days and days and days. I find like sometimes I need something like, and I feel very like isolated. I don't have any refreshing periods within his schedule in a way, right? And what I said was, there's a very big difference between grabbing a coffee and having a good quality conversation with a friend versus going out clubbing. Like you can, so for example, on like a weekend, you could grab a coffee and have a good chat to a mate for 2 hours, and then you've had a beautiful morning, maybe you grab some breakfast, whatever. You're ready, rearing to go, and you haven't ruined, it's not like you've ruined your body or your mind or anything. You're in a good spot mentally, physically, and you can play for that even if you really wanted to. That's very different to going out and having 6 pints at a pub on a Saturday night, because then your Sunday's done. And then, that's like...
No, there's no such thing as a League of Legends player doing that.
Right, but that's what I'm saying.
A 16-year-old guy playing
they're
League.
both quote-unquote social activities, and they're both quote-unquote breaks, but they're very different in terms of recovery. So the way I approached the question was, do things that don't burden your performance in the long run. Like break, right? I think it's important to have a break at some point, whether it's an evening off, maybe you do a morning solo queue, and then you take from, you do a solo queue block from say 9 to 12, and then maybe you just do that one on that Saturday. And then for the rest of the evening, you're kind of off the computer, you're doing your thing and chilling with friends or family, watching a movie, whatever. And then Sunday morning, you're back into it. But that's very different to, again, going out on that Saturday night, because then you can still wake up early on that Sunday and then have a full day. You know what I mean? That was my response. So I think it's just common sense, really, isn't it? It's like, you're not going to have a normal social life if you're going to go down that route. You're not going to have all the other luxuries of the average person around you in terms of time and Netflix and all that shit. And you're not going to have the ability to go out clubbing and all that stuff because, again, the recovery time is so large. So that was the way I approached it. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, all those things, it's like you sort of mention it like as a downside. If you're trying to be the best in something, you just want to just do it all the time. If you really love it.
It does. It's not even a sacrifice. It's just,
it's not a sacrifice.
Nothing else matters anyway.
No, nothing else matters.
Yeah.
I'll be good to know these people that where that question's actually asked from what sort of place. Is it like just they're looking for some way out in some way, or like to be honest, if I'm getting asked that if that's a focus, I think that question is a good question, just one off. But if that's started to be a focus and a really big problem, that's going to be a huge.
Then
problem
you would question whether or not they should even be going down that.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Like they might get close, but they won't have what it really
that
takes
extra
to
push.
To the edge.
Yeah,
I feel you. Yeah, something I think we need to think about, but I think it's largely unexplored because there's so few NA pros or even EU pros that have grinded from a young age and made it into a pro position from the like actually aspired to be pro from a very young age. You know what I mean? It's so uncommon. There's not many of them, right?
I mean, that generation is slowly coming in now, but I guess before it was more. I mean, we just stumbled into it. It's like, we always
and even 17, a lot of the current pros stumbled into it in a way.
They just played the game a lot higher. You're like, oh, cool, I can make a career out of this.
Right. Just something to think about. Anyway, moving on. I had a client, a Cassidy player.
Love Cassidy players.
And
we've got our famous Cassidy player, our pinned clip.
Oh, yeah.
The locked camera Cassidy
Terry,
player. The best silver player in the world, right?
Terry, he's awesome.
Yeah.
He's still in the MLA.
Is he really?
Yeah, I love Terry.
Is he still playing on locked camera?
No, he doesn't. He's a really good player. He just doesn't have enough time to play the game and studies. But anyway, and we're talking about the topic of risk came up where there was a situation where we went through a play. I was in mid-game and he was at I think it was at 2.5 items. He hit his spikes. He was really strong. And he knew that he was going to incrementally win the game anyway, just the way it was going. And like he obviously, his team comp scaled well. He's playing Cassidy. But there was a pick opportunity on the enemy Tristana. And he went for it, but he had to kind of flash ult and then like capitalize on Trist like jumping in. It was a very in the moment, like you had to be very decisive. And he did it and he executed it and he got the kill and they won the game off it essentially, right? And he said to me after, he said, Curtis, wasn't this risky? Like if I mess this up, don't we just lose the game? And I said, I felt really like conflicted in that moment because I talk about risk at certain stages of the game, and then I don't, and then I do talk about risk. I talk about it in differing stages. I do and I don't. And so I reflected on this, and I've got a few thoughts that I want to kind of explore here with you. First one, risk is a very difficult concept to wrestle with because risk is actually subjective based on one's competence, isn't it? So, a classic, like whenever I think of risk, I always think about my background in skateboarding. And a common scenario that anyone who was listening to this had never skateboarded before, the first thing you learn is basically to ollie, which is jump, right? To like jump on the skateboard, ollie on a skateboard. And when you're a kid, and a lot of the people who skate, they always think, oh, it'd be so cool to skate around the streets and like ollie up the curves, right? Like, it just looks cool. It's like I can skate, I can ollie up this curve, and I can just go around everyone. Like, everyone aspires to do that when they first start skating.
Tony Hawk.
Right, yeah, you get inspired by like Tony Hawk and you see them skate around the streets. It's like so cool, right? But when you're not confident to ollie, like you say you might be able to ollie up the curve maybe one at like 50% of the time. If you're in a public setting and there's all these people around you, like on a pedestrian, you're on the sidewalk, and then you fail to ollie up the thing and then you face plant or something, like the risk is like in my mind so high. Like I would always bitch and I would never do it in public.
I'd rather just do it.
I'd
when
rather
I'm
just
in
pick up my
by
skateboard and like
myself.
just walk over there, and then rather than ollie up the curve.
If you are gonna ollie, you ollie in a more safe environment.
Right, yeah, when no one's watching or something, right? But then a pro skater would never think that of risk. It's like you either know how to do it or you don't, or they've done it so many times, there is no risk involved. And so when we're thinking about risk, we got to remember at the back of our mind that this is all just subjective. There's an element of objectivity. Like I would say there's an element of it based off the stakes at play and the game state and how difficult it is to execute particular plays. But again, we got to remember that everyone has different competence levels. And if you're feeling it, you're feeling it. You might not ever think about risk based off your champ mastery. It's either I know how to do it or I don't know how to do it. So I just want to start with there. What are your immediate thoughts with risk? What comes to mind? Does the term come up in your coaching? What are your thoughts?
Risk. All right. So I'd say the way I teach the game, the way I play the game is very risk adverse, right? But then there's always that it's like, well, you know, I still did take, it's not like that's the only way I played the game. Like, obviously I did limit tests and try out things and go in as Rek'Sai and like ult someone who like I thought was killable in terms of lethal range with my ult, but like he survives on 1 HP and then, you know, I fucking throw a game and stuff. I'd say my immediate thought is as you're learning the game, it's so difficult, isn't it? Because you've got to do both.
You've got to do both, right?
You've got to do both.
Because the conundrum is you need to take risks to learn and limit test and figure out what your limits actually are.
Yeah.
But then if you take too many risks and you're what they would call, what is not risk averse. What's the opposite of risk averse? I don't know. You're just a very
reckless.
Yeah, you're a reckless player and you take risks all the time.
Yeah.
Then your confidence can go through the floor because you're failing everything, and your gameplay will become very sloppy, and you lose confidence, and that's going to influence your gameplay obviously in the future. But also, you largely going to be an inconsistent player because you got to pick your right moments. So my theory is this, Nathan. I think it really does depend on the context of like your learning journey. Like, are you trying to limit test a particular thing or not? Like maybe you know that you're not good at this yet, but you're not focusing on it yet. It's like, I know this is an area, like for example, say you're learning, well, I know from like when I learned Kiana, for example, I could go for this dive here, but I know that if I fail this dive, I won't be able to learn the thing that's really important for me in this game, which is actually playing around objectives later on. So I'm going to forego the risk here. I'm not going to limit test this. I can limit test that another time, but I'm going to pick and choose when I'm limit testing. I feel as though that is a very good way of going about it. Knowing when you're doing it.
When you're going to do it.
When you're going to limit, and what specifically you're going to limit test, and what specifically you're willing to take risk with. Same thing might go for you, where say you're trying to climb, right? And there's like a dive. And you kind of know that if you execute it well with your top laner, you could probably make it happen, but you don't need to make that dive happen to win the game.
That's right.
It depends what mindset, what's your mindset like in that moment and approach heading into the game. Like sometimes, you know, you just really need a win. Even though this sounds shit, like sometimes you just need it. Like you're in a hole and you're gaining your confidence back. You're in a rebuilding phase, you know? Yeah. And you just know you're not
just
ready.
Don't do anything risky.
You're not ready to do that. You know, you're not ready.
But you're
to
on a win streak
risk.
and just go for every fight. You're like, oh fuck it, if I lose these next 2 games, who cares?
Well, it's not about the win streak or loss streak. It's more your mindset and your mind state. Are you in a healthy mind state? Like, are you like feeling good, confident? You're just willing to learn and fail, or are you very fragile at the moment and you need to kind of ease into it and take it one step at a time and maybe let's be a little bit more risk averse? I think there's that context of things as well, but I think it is champ dependent.
Yes.
Like I think with Kassadin, for example, right? If your champ inherently scales and has a weak early lane, you're probably less inclined to take risks in the early game because it's not as important. But then even in saying that, I feel it hurts my soul to even say that because it's either it's a player or it's not a player. That should be the point that you're striving to get to. I can either get this cheesy level 3 Kassadin solo kill or I can't. Like when I verse good quality Kassadin players in high elo, they don't play defensive.
You know that the best players are walking that tightrope.
That's right. They're walking that tightrope. So that's where it gets, it makes me feel really...
rough,
and I struggled to articulate my answer because what actually happened is that he didn't resonate with my initial response. So what I told him was that this is okay to go for because you need your Kassadin. And he didn't get what that meant. And so basically, this was like the analogy I used was, so Kassadin, you're a playmaker, right? You're a carry. You're the big dick plays. It's all on you, right? When it gets to mid game, you've already made the sacrifice of picking your champ.
Your lane is a little bit further behind than usual.
Or like your jungler's getting no prior, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
So you got to make up for it. You're a playmaker. You're a carry. So when it's your time to shine, you got your 2 items, you're ready, you're rearing to go, it's your time. If you don't make those plays, there's no point playing your champion in a way. Like you have to take risks and limit test.
Aggressively rift
walk because there's just no point otherwise playing your champ. You're just not juicing the value of your kit. And the analogy I used was say, with any playmaker in any other sport, let's say it's like we're talking UFC or football or whatever it might be, in those intense moments, they're not thinking of risk. If they're playing to win, they're not thinking about risk. They're going to go for that. They're going to go for that shot. Like Cristiano Ronaldo, we're in the overtime. We're 92 minutes in, right? We're in overtime right now. And, it's 1-1. If he loses possession, they could theoretically lose the game, but he sees a shot opportunity. He's never going to say, it's too risky, I'm not going to take this shot. He's going to take it. He's a playmaker. Like, that's what you do in that position. And that's kind of how I felt, like the vibe that Kassadin should be if like you're in mid-game. But I feel like the context is very different. If you're like a tier, or you're maybe like a facilitator, you're playing Sona, and like, sure, you could go for that flash R play, but you're probably going to win anyway. But that's by design. You're a utility champion. You're not the big dick playmaker, But I find that even then, I always feel icky saying it.
Yeah, I don't think it's black and white.
Yeah, it's just not black and white.
As we say with lots of things in League of Legends. I mean, for example, I had a coaching session today with Philip and his learning Diana, and we've been talking about taking good fights and having numbers advantage and tracking where everyone is, right? And then there was this moment in this game, it's pretty even. I think they're a little bit behind, where there was 3 people of the enemy team like pushing mid, and they're like under the tower, right? And then he only had 1 team member on his team, and he decided to just go into the side lane and get 3 waves and like pressure with Rift Herald. But I was saying, it's like, actually, you could go for the ult under the tower, flank. He hit a perfect flank as well, right?
Yeah, right.
Go for that, but which is funny because we've been talking about all this time taking good fights, numbers advantage. And then I'm like, well, this is the opposite of what I mean telling you, because in this specific situation,
you're only going to know if you do it.
Yeah, you've got to do it because now Dinah's one of the very good champions against champions.
You get more damage the more people in your R and that sort of thing.
Of like when people are vulnerable, they're pushed up. It's like Zach under a tower. Like he can turn numbers advantage fights with a really good E. They're overextended, gets on the carry.
And that's like your identity in a way.
That's your identity.
You've got to do that.
But if I'm Rek'Sai, I can't go into 3 people because I can only kill 1 at max, right? And I'll just die. So that's a great situation there, talking about you've got to do it. But yes, he did the risk adverse thing, but
I don't even like the word risk now thinking about it. Is risk even the right word we should use for League?
Oh, well, I think in that specific situation, that is risk. It definitely is, because there's a risk that he doesn't track 1 flash or something like that. But then again, I guess you could have that information, so you could probably get the percentage.
You either know how to do it or you don't.
It would be looking good.
But I guess you can mechanically mis-execute. Maybe he misses his Q.
Someone gets like a lucky skill shot, like you walk into a Zara E or whatever that randomly hits you, and then you just walk up and die. There is definitely an element of risk, but yeah, I mean, I would say lots of League players there are like, even at the top level, like lucky things can happen, which can look like it was risky, right?
The only time for me where I genuinely think about risk in my games is when it comes to going for the end or going for Baron. And I always call for Baron.
For Baron, yeah. I
Like
agree.
I am the ultimate. Like I get spam. I get flamed for this in my
Yeah,
games. So
yeah.
people spam pin
We
question
could have
mark on me.
ended, yeah.
People could have ended. I've actually.
I've lost too many games from that. You just take... It better be safe than sorry.
Yeah, it's better to be
Is
safe than
this-
sorry.
is
Like
this
I would
the one?
rather
Yeah.
like not win a game trying to go for the Baron. Like miss an opportunity to win the game, but get the Baron, then go for the Nexus every time.
Yeah.
Because you're going to probably win the game if you get the Baron anyway. You're like
Yeah.
the chances are so high.
You just close it out just correctly.
You don't
got
need-
2 inhibs.
Yeah.
You know, you just get the Baron
Just
and get
get
the
the
third
Baron.
inhib.
I don't even like the way I view it. Like if I can get the most common situation is when like we've aced them in mid game, and like they've long death time is we can like run up mid and maybe go for it, but like one of their members is coming up earlier. I always just view it as like, okay, if we worst case scenario, best case scenario we end, but worst case scenario what happens is we go up mid, we get the inhib, we get one Nexus tower, and then they protect the last Nexus tower.
That's right.
You have no tempo. They get full control of the map.
control,
We
yep.
lose Baron.
Yep.
And the game's just fucked.
Yep. I mean, everyone's been in that situation a million times.
And that is so painful. That experience is so painful.
So that's your element of
That's for me in my games anyway. For
Okay.
me as a player, that's the only time I think about risk.
So remember, we're on the opposite end of like we've taken a shit ton of risk and probably
Right,
learned things
right.
and failed a lot, right?
Yeah.
So I think we need to like categorize this as like what does risk mean for someone learning the game?
Yeah.
And what does risk mean for like a high elo player like
I'm going to bring it back
ourselves?
to very simply, where are you at on your journey in terms of like what, like, are you learning it? Have you already got a set learning objective, or are you trying to discover what your weaknesses are such that you can create a learning objective? So I call this, I think I've spoken about this on the podcast, where there's the execution and learning phases of, have I spoken about that on the podcast?
You've dabbled in it.
Right. So
Clarify
I
yourself,
talk about
please.
this all the time in my MLA, where someone is either in the learning phase of their solo queue journey or the execution phase. So what I mean by that is if I set someone a learning objective and they're working on it and they need to put in the games, they need to put in for a few weeks to like make that a habit. They're in what I would call like the phase where they're actually creating the new habit. There is what I call the learning phase. Once they've actually ingrained that habit, and they've got it. And so I imagine it's like they just got a new piece of gear. Like they've added a new piece of gear onto and they're stronger. Now we execute. We see where that gets you. Just play. Play with your new skill set and get to the rank where you plateau next. That's execution phase. You're not actually focusing on anything. You're just expressing your best self. You're using your new skill set, and we see where that gets you. Then we go back into the learning phase, figuring out where you're at, where your plateau point is again, and then we give you another learning objective, right? I think if you've already got a set learning objective and like you know where you need to be directing your attention, taking these risks, these big dick risky plays, they can actually overcomplicate your learning journey, I believe, in a way.
Yeah, I can say that because a risk. Let's say a gold player or platinum player who views something as risky, to us will be crystal clear whether it was risky or not, right?
That's right.
But there's no way they could possibly have the knowledge for that because they're missing some piece.
They're missing information,
something.
yeah.
You know, they're not thinking about, for example, oh great, I had another example here. Like this platinum player review today I did. The enemy team used all their abilities on someone, and like, but he was still playing cautiously because he thought it was like a risky play. But I saw it as like, dude, you need to be going here.
He
It's like,
didn't
let's go.
recognize
It's
that they
100%.
used their abilities.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yep.
He didn't realize that there was no kill threat on him.
Right.
So I think that the word risk has literally two different meanings, and I think it's hard for us to relate what risk means for
Right.
low elo
Yeah.
players.
So the way we perceive risk and they perceive risk is very different, isn't
yeah.
it?
So risk is actually, I think that you throw the
you're
word
spot
out.
on. You're actually spot on. It's for when we say it genuinely is risk because it's a very ambiguous
We have
situation.
max information.
Yeah, so it's like
We have max information.
okay, let's be clear here.
And game sense.
The reason we in our situations, like the Baron and End one, the margins are so tight, and we have all the information. We're thinking about everything. We know it all, but with the timing, it's more of a timing issue, isn't it? It's like this could go one way or it could go the other. It's very, very like because I don't know everyone's damage on the team like perfectly, so.
Yeah, that's game sense, intuition.
That's
That you
game
built
sense.
over thousands of games.
But in a way, it's a very ambiguous, it's a very confusing. There's a lot of ifs, and
It's very hard to explain.
It's very hard to explain. That's a genuine risk, right? Because well, in a way, it's still the same thing as the lower elo players, but a much more complex situation where risk becomes a very real thing, right? Because we're talking about a situation where we've considered 100 variables, but because there's 100 variables at play, it's an inherently risky play because there's so much room for error in those 100 variables, right? But whereas a play that, like a dive that a platinum player does, in our mind, that a risk isn't the right word because it either works or it doesn't work. And there's only maybe 10 variables there. And we see that as either no risk or risk. I mean, sorry, a good play or a bad play. But they view it as this might be risky and I don't need to do this. But in reality, you're saying they just don't have the necessary information or they don't have the ability to, like, they don't understand the variables. So they can't make that call either way.
Yes.
Right.
It's interesting how you say that more variables, the worse. Like sometimes, let's say even for a dive, there could be like 3 variables, but if one of them collapses, it really goes bad. Like if I think about a dive with a champion with no CC, right? And it looks like we have to execute perfectly. There's not many variables, but if one ability's missed, how does that work? I don't understand the variable analogy in that. Because early game dives, they can go bad just by one person missing one ability, and inherently that would be risky, wouldn't it?
Right, that's another good point.
And it depends on your ranking.
So the complexity of a dive can also be just depends on the kit and how the champs interact. The amount of outplay potential that person has. No, but in a way that is variables in a way, right? Because each movement that person can do is like a variable, isn't it? Like the person you're diving, say you're trying to dive a Fiora, and you're doing it with like you're playing Tarms and Zhao or some shit, right? Like there's a lot of variables at play there in a way, right? Because even though Fiora only has 3 abilities, the amount of options she has with those 3 abilities is there's so many potential variations of how she can use the abilities. What ability she uses to parry, repulsory, what ability she uses to Q and dodge. There's a lot there going on, right? So,
I view the Fiora W as that's one variable.
Right. Yeah. No, but then you got to, we're getting very complex in the weeds here, but theoretically, it depends. Because what I'm saying is that, yeah, sure, that's one variable, but how that interacts with the other person's kit is another variable, right? So
you're thinking about which ability she will W.
Yeah, like we don't know what she's going to W. Is she going to W the time Q? Is she going to W your knockup?
Okay.
Like we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know. But anyway, I think to bring this back to more practical, more real world, I think that in regards to clients, I still think if something isn't a game-losing play, you should kind of just do it. Like I genuinely say, if you're unsure, just do it. Like that's generally my rule of thumb. Like I think it's a safe rule of thumb to have. The caveats to that though are if it's like a big risk, right? Like in the sense, like the risk being if you fail it, you lose the game.
You lose Baron.
Or a Soul Dragon or whatever it might be. If it's a significant, like the cost of failing is so large, then you really have to understand that's when the context of your climb comes into play. What's your mental state like at that time? Are you in the learning journey or execution phase? For learning phase or execution phase? How important is this win? Are you in a promos? That sort of thing. Even though this runs counter to our narrative, which wins don't count. But I feel like they're just real because I've seen players that are very fragile and they've come off the back of a massive slump and they've started to regain some confidence. They've started to really get back into the fundamentals and stuff like that. I would urge that player that's trying to get their footing back again and re-get back into the climb and the learning journey to probably not take those risks as much. It's just nuance. This is a niche. This is case by case basis, right? Like the cost of failure for a player like that, they're not going to have the mental resilience to get into the review and look at the learning, are they? Unfortunately, and that's that person in that situation.
Here's a risky example. Okay, when you're playing, let's say if you're playing behind, let's say I'm doing something. I risk, like let's say I don't have all the information, right? I'm going to go for a side lane play and just hope the enemy jungler is not there. because I'm behind. I know that's
Right, when you're
that's a
behind,
risk.
you're always going to take more
More
risky
risks,
plays.
yes.
And what we mean by that specifically is that you have less information.
Yeah.
There's a lot more ambiguity because you don't have all the information in front of you.
Yeah.
I feel like we kind of opened Pandora's box here. I feel like there is so much.
Yeah. I mean, I think in general though, if you do just again stick to the fundamentals and stuff, risk. I think risk more comes to champ mastery more so, like team fighting and stuff like that. Diner example, Diner going in there. But in terms of the early game for that Diner, all the fundamentals. What's a good gank? What's a bad gank?
I actually
farming up.
kind of like thinking about that some
No need
more.
to take
I
risks.
disagree that is a risk.
Okay.
As in, like, I wouldn't use that as risky. If that was my coaching client and like my Diana mid, I custom Diana mid, had a flank angle to get 3 of them,
What would you
I
call
don't
that
view
then?
it as risk. I view it as that's a missed opportunity. So the way I view it is like, okay, these are our options. You can go mid and fish for the 1 for
Or
3
side
here,
lane.
or side lane. Ultimately, if you're unsure, I always say go for it. Like if you genuinely, okay, so the way I view it is this: if you genuinely believed that play wouldn't work, great, go to the side lane, do your thing, right? If you genuinely believe you're genuinely unsure, you didn't know if that play could work or not, so you just defaulted to the side lane. I don't like that. I will say that's a missed opportunity, and we're never going to know if that would have worked or not because you didn't do it.
No, 'cause that.
That's what I say.
Yep.
I think I only say risk when
Yep.
it comes to like very ambiguous, highly complex situations. Personally.
Okay. So you're again more targeting towards high elo people, experienced people in the game.
No, again, this is for anyone in any player in a situation where it involves a Baron, anything to do with like exposed nexuses and Barons. It doesn't matter
Okay.
what the elo bracket is.
Let's
if you're
say,
gold
let's
or plat,
say,
wherever.
let's say it's 4v5 on a Baron. You have the 5 people, but you're against a Xerath or a Ziggs that's able to poke.
Yep.
It could get a bit risky, and the enemy jungler is still up, but you feel like you have the numbers advantage.
That's where risk comes into play. You know, that's where I would say, okay, this is risky to coin flip a Baron, and ultimately it depends. And
Again, is it necessary? Could you just
I could just not even
reset and then just get control of it again?
Yeah,
and
right, right.
Like use that death time to get control of the area.
And that's where risk really comes into play. I feel like you can highlight a point using the word risk.
It's true. I don't think it's just for high elo as well.
I think that's in every elo bracket.
Yeah.
And I think as coaches, we have to be very careful using the word risk because we don't want risk averse. When you're in the learning journey, you don't want risk averse players.
Yeah, they're hard to coach.
They're hard to coach.
Yeah.
It's better for someone to be more reckless
Yeah.
and then tone that down over time.
Yeah.
I would say I don't think you were risk averse. I'm thinking back to your journey when you were in your prime. You were opposite. I would say you really walked the tightrope at all stages and you were willing to die to maximize your output in fights. Like, I wouldn't say you were a risk-averse player at all. Like, when you really learnt the game.
Like my Udia back, like I was like walking the tightrope
Yeah.
of like dodging skill shots, walking up.
You were never a risk-averse player when
Nah.
you learnt the game.
That's true. That's true.
Like, thinking about it.
Yeah. Wonder about you for Xerath mid and stuff.
I was
probably
risk-averse.
way
I've
more
always been
risk-averse.
risk-averse. And that's actually why I struggled
Yeah.
when I moved to Assassins.
Yeah, because you have to.
It was
take
very
risks.
difficult for me to get out of my comfort
Yeah.
zone and like limit test.
Yeah.
Limit testing was a foreign concept to me, actually.
Yeah, actually, that's so interesting. That's right, isn't it? I've never actually played the game risk adverse. I throw
That's
games
new
and
to
lose
you.
games all the time, which has led me to a risk adverse play style.
You've got there in the end.
I've got there in the end.
But only after you've played very recklessly for a very long time.
Yes.
I think 95%.
Especially in the last year with my journey of level 3 junglers.
That's what I'm saying.
hard thrown so many
I
games.
think 95% of your journey specifically, you've been incredibly reckless. But with purpose, with intention.
with intention, yeah.
You've been
It's always
reckless-
with intention.
It's always with intention
Yeah.
to be a better maximizing your output.
That's right.
Essentially.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think that but again, I think you that wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, and you could have done that better, right? I think we actually come from really fascinating. We've come from very different sides. So let's say we have a line, right? And on this line, like we ideally want to get to the middle ground, which is like a balance point where
can take opportunities like that.
Yeah, you're willing to take opportunities when they present themselves and have the confidence to do so, but you're not blinded by your ego or whatever it is, and you're willing to say no to a play that you feel as though isn't necessary, right? Let's say that's 50. You're at 100, right? You went from 100 down to 50. I went from 0 up to 50. I was too risk averse. You were too reckless. And then we met in the middle, which is very interesting.
It's very interesting. I'd never thought of it that way.
I never thought of it that way, but I think that's
because
the case.
I'm branded in solo queue as the player that doesn't take fights or anything like that, which is interesting.
Right. Yeah. Which is very interesting.
It's very interesting.
But I think that's made up your last like 6 months, probably specifically.
Yeah.
Has been that the push it like it's pushed you over the edge to be more risk averse, I would say. But you only did that when you felt confident in your ability.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So, for me, I think I was probably not enough. And I think my learning, if I were to go back in time, I would have probably pushed my limits more and been more willing to fail. You going back over, I'm assuming you would have taken less risk probably because you lost a lot of confidence, I would say, a large part of your league journey because you were too reckless, and then it all kind of mix mashes together, right? Like every game just blends in together, and you don't even know what your limits are.
I can't even tell what if I'm being risk adverse. By moments I'll go one extreme and then the other. And
the ideal, like I said, to summarize this very neatly, tied up with a ribbon. I genuinely think that the best way to improve in league is purposefully knowing when you are and not taking risks, right? So let's say let's throw the entire argument out the window that someone can't identify risk, right? Let's just screw that. Who gives a shit if they can or can't, right? It doesn't even matter.
I agree. Yeah.
Let's say there's the average platinum player. He believes in this moment this is risky, whether or not it is or isn't. Who gives a shit? If he believes it's risky, he has to make a choice in that moment, whether or not he's willing to accept the consequences of failing that play. If he's in a good mental state, he's willing to learn, he's ready to learn, do it every single time. If he's not in a good mental state, he's not ready to learn quite yet, he's maybe in the execution phase, then maybe not. Don't take the risk. But if unsure, if you're on the middle ground, if you're unsure, take the risk. Make the play with intention. Review it after.
Pain plus reflection equals progress.
Right, Ray Dalio special.
So you've got to get those painful experiences.
And so your Diana client, I would have, unless he had a very good reason to not make that play, sure, he might win that game, right? Because of what he did. But I don't think that's going to make him a better Diana player.
Agreed.
Ultimately, what he values more, that's not up to us, by the way. That's a call on him. What does he want more out of this game? Does he want the LP? Does he want the learning, long-term learning? One's long-term, one's short-term. Tying it back to a real-life example. Do we want the quick money? Maybe we need the quick money because we need to pay our bills. Or can we forego that? Bank that money.
What are you talking about? Guys taking a risk from a loan shark, taking some money. Am I, is this guy going to come kill me if I don't pay back? Versus, I'm just going to keep working and not take that.
I'm just saying from that's another real life example, right? Like we could keep the money in an account making interest and take it out later.
Okay.
But we might need the money right now
Yeah.
for whatever reason. Same thing with LP.
Yeah. Investing in known long-term gain stocks versus the risky new cryptocurrency or something like that.
Right. BitConnect.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. So the other one, Nathan, I had was what was it?
Drafting something.
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
drafting. I saw this fascinating Reddit post. It was like, and we know, like Reddit loves draft, and everyone loves draft in league. Like it's the sexiest It's like
super
it's the
sexy.
shiny new Mustang type.
Because
thing, you know?
anyone can theoretically just pick a different champion and they've cracked the code, right?
Right, and you know, like, just a side note here. Whenever I hear about, like, I had this in my Discord. People said, let's go into drafts so you can outdraft each other.
Oh, God.
In, like, the pro drafts, right?
Oh.
And whenever I see that, like, and coaches talk on, like, social media, say, let's do it, let's meet up and we'll do a draft war and, like, so you can outdraft each other. I just cringe because it's like, who's to say that draft is better? It depends on the players. You're assuming in, like, a perfect world that every player has no tendencies.
The way that they are, the frame going into it, and like I can sort of understand it. Like it's what happens if everyone played this perfectly, right?
That's never,
But
ever
I
the
don't
situation.
view the game that way.
We never view the game that way.
Yeah.
It's always to do with mastery.
Yeah.
Like, again, I would rather, okay, let's say there's a 45-55 draft. Whatever the fuck that means, right? People say this draft is more favored slightly to the other. But if I'm the one that's slightly unfavored, they got their one trick, right? Or they got their champ that person's really comfortable on. I would take that any day of the week. Say it's playing, we got like Oriana, say Victor v Syndra. But the Syndra isn't as competent as Syndra, and the Victor's really good at Victor. Who gives a shit about if Syndra can win that on or not? The Victor's going to win, period. It's not about the matchup.
So are you talking about the highest, and if we're going to watch SK like T1 versus, G2 and at MSI coming up, or are you talking about
I was just more talking
the
to
solo queue game, right?
I was saying like just regardless of competitive draft. Like people like to do like competitive clash drafts.
But again, so we're doing like amateur.
I'm not referring to anything in particular.
But you've got to. I think there is a difference.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But
Okay.
I would say for the example specifically that I was referring to was
where is it?
Amateur? I mean, everywhere. You said everywhere. Amateur, pro, collegiate, clash, everywhere. Coaches from every rank and every division love doing this.
Okay.
That's what I've seen. That's what I see.
Okay.
Yep. But anyway, so my point being, everyone loves draft, right?
Yes.
Everyone loves draft.
Yes.
Sexy. It's the easiest thing to talk about and change in a game, isn't it? We just pick a different champion. Don't pick.
This is where people have champion pool issues and stuff. They're like, for example, I always hear Nathan, I don't have an AP champion in my pool, because they're getting in that draft mindset.
Let's leave the whole champ pool stuff to the side for now.
Okay.
All right, let's just leave that.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
The Reddit post was essentially, these are the top 5 comps that are currently seen in competitive play.
Okay.
It was something like, there was like a bunch of 5 comps that basically copy-pasted from LCS games, right?
Yeah.
And it said, let's do a fun activity where you guys from Reddit can draft and list out your perfect counterpick comp to the draft, the meta drafts, right?
Okay.
And so you get all types of people coming in, writing their theories. They write like their champs, their counter to that comp, and like the theory behind it, right?
Okay.
And it got me thinking. It got me. It made me laugh a bit because draft is an incredibly complex like the interaction between champions is so complex, isn't it? Like, let alone, like, we're talking mid jungle, two, like 4 champions together, or even actually not even talking just the interactions on your team, like how 2 champs on your own team interact, how that interacts with another 2 champs in mid lane. That alone, not even taking into account bot lane, top jungle interactions, all of that aside is overwhelming sometimes. Like when we get into a review, sometimes it's like, oh my God, the way, even if I play a lot of my champion and how my champion interacts within a champion in a game, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Who is an average player or an average coach out there able to know all the detailed intricacies of way compositions work, matchups, counter picks? How do they know that without really knowing what it would feel like to play any of these champions?
Okay.
Is my point I'm trying to make.
Okay.
It's like,
Because I was lost, but now I'm getting it.
It feels very fairyland that anyone could remotely have a viable opinion on what to say about draft if they don't play like a lot of those champions or have interacted with those champions at a high level on a regular basis. Because let's say an average gold coach
Okay.
has never played
Yeah.
with a very good Kindred before.
Yeah.
How the hell are they going to know how Kindred interacts in general in a game with champions? Because they've never seen it. Even if you watch it on a stream, it's very different to play than when you're playing it, is what my point is. So let's just, what are your thoughts? What are you confused about? Tell
I'm
me what
so
you're
confused. Like, so your point is that people love draft.
They love draft.
They think they understand draft.
Yes, they think they understand
but
draft.
they have no merit. They've
Zero
never played
merit.
high elo. They've never coached in pro.
No.
Okay, got it. So now the thing,
So
and then
it's
they're talking
basically
about
having an
draft.
opinion on something that you can have zero opinion about, is what I'm saying.
Okay, yeah, you love the meritocracy.
And I think it's dangerous.
It's super simple. Like, it's like anything outside of pro play, right? And let's say an academy, so second tier leagues, like never ever talk about draft ever. I never want to hear it. It's about execution, mechanic stuff. I mean, you could talk about it, but it's like should be 5% of what you're talking about. That's as simple as it is.
But
right?
I'm even talking about from like a casual viewer perspective. How having an opinion is even like embarrassing.
Oh, it's embarrassing.
Okay, the way I view it is this: it's a traditional sport.
Yeah.
And people like hate on Tom Brady. So there's a play, right?
Yeah.
And Tom Brady does his play, and then like everyone like shouts at the coach, say, "Why would you make this play? Like, why would you call this play? Or why would Tom Brady not throw it there or whatever?" It's like we know fucking nothing that goes on in behind the scenes and what they're thinking and how they're thinking and like how the dynamic is on the field and how those players emotionally are feeling. Like we know nothing really. Like it's better to just shut up and let the experts talk. Like unless they, and like an actual athlete who's like been a coach or played at a high level to really talk about it. No one else, everyone else who talks about that, basically it's a non-opinion, right? It's just noise essentially. But the difference is in league is that most people have an opinion on draft.
So you're saying you're angry that everyone has an opinion on
Everyone
draft.
has an opinion about draft.
Yeah.
And like you hear like people say all the time, why are people in NA playing Renekton? Like all that shit, you know, you hear it all the time.
Yeah, but that's just stuff echoed from...
Yeah, it's just echoed, but it's like they believe it though. They genuinely believe
that
this
is
stuff.
from experts though.
Yeah, but yeah, that's fair enough. You can kind of see that because
It's echoed from
LS
experts.
is like quote experts and stuff like have their opinions on it.
Yeah.
And that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
But like this Reddit post was like
Was
a
people
random
coming
one.
up with their own
Random
theories.
ideas.
Okay.
And like, sure, it's a fun experiment and people can, you know,
Yeah.
it's like, you know, bring your kid to a playground and everyone has fun type thing. But it's like, it's scary how serious they take it and to the lengths of their explanations they will go.
Got it. Interesting.
So like this guy was saying, okay, we've got to pick Trundle Vel'Koz here, or like Trundle Jungle into this, and then that will counter their entire comp. How Trundle will interact with Gnar. Like he has like this entire thesis. And you know, it's cool, he's having a crack, right? But it's like people you know, because he sounds like people like upvote this shit and like people, oh, that's genius, so smart. But like I was looking at it and there was delusion. I was like, okay, you want to play Trundle into like a Xayah, Ahri, Gnar comp? Zyra Khan, Ahri, Gnar? How is Trundle going to do anything? Even if, great, it's good into Volibear jungle, thumbs up. But how is it going to do anything into these other champions? But that person's not going to know how it plays to field Trundle. Like you play Trundle, right? Like you could have an opinion on specifically Trundle in this game. So in order to have a very good analysis of a draft, what you would actually have to do is have 5 players who play those champions and or role coaches, and then they might be able to give you their perspective on how this champion operates in this game, and then all those people could come together and then they could have like a really good high quality discussion because they've played those champions at a high level, they've watched a lot of scrims at a high level to see how that champion interacts, or maybe they studied that champion a lot, and then they could give you the positives and negatives.
It's cool, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That would make sense to me. Yeah. But it's like all this stuff is coming from Fairyland. What experiences? And I think this is dangerous. Like the narrative that like there's a comp, counter it, like find some champs that like counter it. It's like, how do you know that? Sure, you might look at the Trundle versus Volley and that might be a thumbs up, but then how is Trundle going to interact with all the other champs in the game? And I think people get so caught up in this champ is good into this, but they're thinking of like that team fight at 25 minutes. They're not thinking about how it feels.
The lane phase.
How does it feel to play Trundle into those champions up until that point?
Yeah.
So there's a huge detachment between reality and like what they think. And this is only bridged by playing it yourself or watching scrims for a very, very, very long time. Let's give a perfect example, right? Let's say, right, there's, a unique counter pick. Let's say it might be, let's pull one out of that. Nocturne Jungle, right? It's like Nocturne is so good in this game, right? And say it's like Nocturne into like, say you have like a common one is like multi-threat into like Jace. So you have like, say like a Nocturne, Camille, all this stuff into like a Jace, right? And let's say the other enemy team, they all in on early game. They went like Jace and they went like Nidalee or like Elise, Jace Elise with like TF mid or like some pressure mid laner or something like that, right? In theory, sure, if they could get to the point where Nocturne could ult top and he has room to ult top and he's not like getting invaded on by like the mid laner in the jungle, like if that could happen, sure, thumbs up, that like makes sense. But like until you understand what goes on to get Nocturne to that point, it's very difficult for you to just pull that draft out of your ass because you're completely disregarding all of the other factors up until that one point where you can press R, Camille presses R, and then the Jace dies. It's not that simple. It's not as simple as Nocturne getting in position. How do you know he's in jungle his entire warded? What happens if they invade level 1, split the map? What happens if the mid laner perma has prior and they invade your second red buff and you have to split the map later on in the game? What happens when the Jace, they stack a wave and dive the Camille before you even got to level 6? That can these are all things that can happen. You got to know the dangers of this, but you're only going to know that if you play it. And then now, if you played Nocturne in that situation, you'd be like, okay, I need my mid laner to have prio because my mid doesn't have prio. He won't be able to defend me in the invade. We need a strong early game mid laner. Boom, that's a great finding. But that's something that only comes through experience, isn't it? That's my point. My point is that there's a massive gap between reality and ideas. A huge gap. And there's not enough being done in between. People don't lack ideas. People lack execution. People lack an understanding.
I like that quite a lot.
Of how to actually execute things.
Yeah.
Like anyone can come up with an idea of how something might work. The doing of it is very, very difficult.
I mean, that's the typical what you see in the venture capital business idea world, right? Everyone has good ideas. It sounds good, but then the market just completely just shits on it, right? Like the reality, like the market.
Or it sounds really good in theory, and then they get into the logistics of it, and it's just not a good business or something yet. Yeah. And that's my rant. That's my point. And I'm sick. Curtis. And I'm sick of seeing like the things about counter picks and stuff and drafts. It's like, okay, have you played any of these champions that you're talking about here at a high level?
Yeah.
Do you have any idea what it takes to like make this happen?
So this is just this Reddit post that triggered, or you see it in your community?
Yeah, but no, I mean, I don't really see it in my community because
that's what I think. I think the great job, something I'm proud of, is we don't really talk about draft at all in draft.
Well, we're not really in the competitive scene as well, right?
Yeah, so that's a competitive thing. That's as simple as it is. It's a competitive thing. If you want to get better at solo queue, draft should be 2-3% of what you're thinking about.
Right.
That's great with our communities. I think that they get that picture.
Yeah.
Because you're just going on some crazy because you saw a Reddit post.
Yeah, no, but because I was surprised at the amount of responses. Okay. Like thousands of comments. I think there was like 2,000 comments or something.
Oh, wow. So it was huge.
It was a massive Reddit post. And I was like, or whatever it was.
This is the community you're saying. This is the general
community. This was like the general community. I'm like, this is concerning. It's like, yeah, sure, it's a fun exercise, but it's like everyone, they weren't just short little responses. Like, it was like a lot of effort going into the post, and people having discussions on this shit. It's like so many words, like all these words and not a single example type thing, It's just like...
And that's exactly why, folks, we'll always have a small audience because Curtis just absolutely shits on the general population.
No, we need to educate.
Educate, yeah.
We need to educate. Yeah. It's like, it's.
Don't waste your time writing paragraphs.
Yeah, writing paragraphs upon paragraphs about how
it's literally a waste of time.
Yeah.
Like, again, maybe if they have fun doing it, sure.
Yeah, that's where I'm like, okay, maybe I don't know where.
I guess, I think we always need to distinguish, our audience, we want to improve at solo queue. like I'm sure those people don't actually think they actually don't realize that actually doesn't help them psychologically. I think they
Right.
think that helps them knowledge of the game. I think again it's just a different subsection of the community that we don't talk to.
Yeah, potentially.
All right, do you want to jump into mailbag?
Do you have any topic? You're all good.
Let's just jump into mailbag.
All right.
We got lots of stuff. Away we go. Welcome back for Nathan's mailbag. Jingle, jingle, jingle song. All right, first question for mailbag comes from Calvin. Title of this email is Self-Discipline and Scheduling. Two core themes of the Broken by Concept podcast, guys. We love those words here. Hi, Curtis and Nathan. Recently, I haven't been playing League nearly as much as I used to. The main reason is because I can't focus while doing homework, and I often end up having to grind out assignments before the deadline instead of playing blocks at my usual time. I know why this is happening, but I can't seem to stop myself. I always waste time that's supposed to be for homework, just watching useless shit on YouTube, or I grab a snack, then come back, and soon the hour passes and nothing is done. Yesterday, I just laid in bed pissed at myself because summer 2021 to winter 2021, I was pretty disciplined. As a result, climbed from bronze 1 to silver 1 in my first season. Now I'm just playing super bad intensity games in mid-silver 2, and I don't think I've done a full 3 block in a month or more. You guys have taught the importance of scheduling over and over. I've dug myself a dangerously deep hole since it's only my second semester in college. So I guess my question is, how do you guys do it? How do I even get back on track to finish the semester strong and get back to climbing?
It's a great question.
That is a good question.
Good question. Do you want to start or you want me to start?
You start.
I'm big on, I love talking about transition periods of the day. So, as you are probably aware, Calvin, most of the time in the day just disappears doing exactly what you're doing. And we're all guilty of it, you know, whether you're mindlessly scrolling through Reddit, Instagram, YouTube, whatever it might be, hours just vanish. They just vanish because it adds up. It's like 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here, 5 minutes here. By the end of the day, you've wasted 2 hours, right? And that's a 3 block, just done. And so I call them, and there's these parts of the day where I call transition periods. So let's say, Calvin, you come home from college or whatever. He's in college, right?
Yeah, second semester.
So let's say you live in a dorm or something, I'm assuming. So he goes to class, you go to class, say the class ends at like 2, and it takes him, if you walk straight from class back to your dorm room and at like that period of time, if you walk straight there, it takes 20 minutes. So boom, 2 to 2:20. There's a period, right, where you're like between activities. So there's the walk phase, and then there's like the period between sitting down and doing something versus actually like just doing nothing, just relaxing or whatever it's just actually not even relaxing. I call it just wasted time. So basically the way I try to structure things whenever possible, when I'm really killing it, is when I have time to actually relax, and I try to minimize these transition phases. So I'm either going home to relax for 15 minutes and genuinely do nothing, where I'm going to chill in my bed, whatever, watch an episode or something. And that's chill time. That's actual chill time. And then boom, straight into whatever it is I need to do. Or I'm going straight into it and then relax later. What you don't want to do is you don't want to get home, sit on your desk, then bring out your phone when you should be studying, waste 10 minutes there, start studying, pick up your phone another 20 minutes later, chuck it, waste another 5-10 minutes. Those 5 to 10 minutes, they're not even relaxing. You're not actually relaxing. What you're doing is you're actually still stressed because you're thinking about your study. You're not actually unwinding. You're not doing either. You're not studying and you're not unwinding. And so the transition period between the activities is where you really need to be decisive. So I'll give you an example for me in my day. So my morning schedule on a day that I go to the gym is very jam-packed. It's like I need to be like really on point. If I waste time, I won't have time to go to the gym, right? So for me, I wake up, do my morning schedule, I do my first coaching session of the day. That finishes at 7 a.m. straight after that, if I waste time, even if I waste 10 minutes doing like maybe I check Twitter, whatever it might be, that 10 minutes can bite me in the ass. If I procrastinate making breakfast and then procrastinate like doing that whole eating my breakfast and then getting my shit sorted, then going back onto the computer to upload my VODs and reply to a clip channel and check my emails. If I procrastinate in there that extra 10, 15 minutes, sometimes then I won't have enough time to like do what I need to do after I come back from the gym. So like I need to be really on point of every minute of that morning. And now know this through painful experiences of not having enough time to do what I want to do. Of like, okay, I got to get my shit together. I can't afford to waste time. I got to already boom, get off the computer, make my breakfast, come back, reply to DMs. Like I can fit all this in if I don't waste a minute. It's all about cutting the transition periods out though.
So there's no like that 15-minute waste. It's just like this activity into next activity. And it's very
when
easy
I have my
for
best
people to
days, that's what I do.
Yeah.
And so that's the number one advice I'd give. And like, you don't
You
have
build
to...
momentum, don't you?
It's momentum. Yeah, it is momentum. And you feel good doing it. You feel good. Like, and you actually realize when you do that on one day, I'll try for a day, cut out all the transition shit. It's either you're doing it or you're not doing it. Like you're relaxing, genuinely relaxing, or you're not at all. You'll get to the end of that day and like, wow, I have an extra hour out of nowhere. And I have so much time. That's my biggest advice, man. Do you have any?
So that's about scheduling, right? More so. So his final question was, I'm just reading it again. How do I get back on track to finish the semester strong and get back to climbing? So it sounds like it's sort of like, so the thing he looks like he's pissed off about himself is that he used to be disciplined and stuff, and then he's dropped the ball. That would be a thing of bigger picture stuff for me, thinking like, why are you doing what you're doing? Do you even want to do yoga degree? All that sort of stuff.
How important is solo queue to you?
Yeah.
Like, what do you want to get done in your solo queue?
It sounds like he does want to play solo queue. That's the point of the thing, right? He wants to get back to climbing, you know? So, just simply just think about, get excited about it.
Well, I think it's also, you got to know your league performance is connected to everything else in your day. Your physical health, your mental health, everything. Like you won't perform well in solo queue, period, if you're not physically and mentally in the right place.
Yep. Yeah, and the best thing to do, I mean, you can experience it. I never studied properly. Get the work done and then play.
Every time.
That's as simple as it is, right?
Go home, do your study, and then play guilt-free League of Legends.
That's it. That's where you've got to get to.
That's the goal.
And then you need to transition period, get the World Championship, so
but
then you can get those studies.
Do it once to feel it. Because the feeling of doing it, like having a prepared week, do a week where like you're actually just killing it, dude. You just want to, you go above and beyond to get everything done. When you have a free day, when you have a free evening and there's zero guilt there, that's the best feeling ever, man. When I was at uni, that was the best feeling ever. I got those assignments done and I go home, it's game time. Nothing's going to interrupt me here.
Yep.
That's the best.
You were a top OPL player back in those days, Curtis, so you made it work.
Yeah, it's all just doing. I did all my stuff at school and then come back and then that's it.
Yeah, if I studied properly, I would definitely be writing in with Calvin's question for sure, and then I would need to just do the work first because I would 100% be like leave it off until the night, get home, super excited, thinking about league all day, play my 3 block. Yeah, it takes a shit ton of discipline to do that.
It's a lot of discipline
for you.
It's a lot of discipline.
Curtis is pretty impressive that Curtis is able to manage that. All right, next question here is from Thomas. The title of this email is LP, emotional regulation. Another key word we use in the podcast, Curtis. We've got a lot of messages, The messages are sticking with people, aren't they, Curtis?
Good.
The terminology, the BBC terminology. Hi, Curtis and Nathan. My name's Tom, 16 years old, and I love your mindful perspective on things and overall how you view League. I've decided to join MLA in April 2021 with intention to climb ranks, but I realize that there is much more to that. Currently, I'm sitting D3 to D1, and it's effing my mind being D4, D3 one week and D1 another. Right now, I have miserable experience in League. My process depends on wins and losses. If I'm winning, process is going, and if I start losing, it goes to shit. First game of the day is crucial. If it's a loss, I drop my intensity, and before I know it, I queue up again without learning objectives with intention to win the game. Gain, lost LP. We all know how dangerous it is. I'm ashamed of how many days I've actually wasted like this. Tricky thing is that I know it's a problem, but I don't know how to fix it. It's easy to talk about this with calm mind and solution. Seems simple, but in reality, I feel like I lost control of myself and emotions are dictating my actions.
Yep.
I believe the longer I'm here, the worse it is, and it's supporting fixed mindset that I cannot change. How can I stop putting emphasis in LP? How can I separate myself from rank? How can I manage expectations by getting coached by the best mid coach for so long and still being stuck at a specific rank? Doesn't it say that I'm horrible?
Is this Tom?
This is Tom, yeah.
Oh, I was yes, Tom. I know Tom. Okay, yeah, I told Tom to write in. This is a big problem.
Okay.
I think where we need to start here, Nathan, is you need to accept where you're at. Like this is this is baseline. Like step number one.
I didn't get this when I came back. Remember, I didn't accept my current level of skill. I was so fucking.
Nathan knows more about this than anyone.
I was so delusional at where I was. In relation to because I thought I just had all the game knowledge, but just the answers on the Rift. If you open up my OPGG when I was my leg client, you opened up one of my games. If I reviewed that game, that makes perfect sense why that person is into Diamond 3, Diamond 2. The great relieving thing about that is that if that's what that player looks like, then we're going to be able to see common trends with the challenger player, what great League of Legends looks like. Then all you're doing is working to get to that level, and you need to really, really encapsulate. Print this out, type it up, get it tattooed. Your decision making in game, every decision you make equals your rank over time. That's as simple as if you really embody that mindset. LP nothing, it just doesn't all matter. It just doesn't matter, you know.
Yeah, and I keep saying the same because Tom. I think Tom's problem is this. He's been he got to Diamond, right? He's been out of Diamond for a while. I think it's a combination of many things. Number one, he doesn't understand how difficult it is to climb to Master Tier for the first time.
Yeah, so that's toxic expectations.
The toxic expectations.
He thinks he's just going to get there. He's getting coached. Great, I've
he hears it, but he doesn't really internalize it. Like he goes in one ear and out the other. He's like, yeah, Curtis, I get it. It's hard, whatever. The second thing.
Well, that's the third thing. So what I've just said, he obviously doesn't get that mindset.
Yeah, he doesn't get that mindset.
The second thing is he has toxic expectations. Keep going.
And his ego won't let him accept that he's like a D3 player. And in his mind, he fluctuates, right? He goes from D1 back down to D4, which says many, many things. In my opinion, it could be many things. Okay, let's break down the reason why there could be fluctuations. One big one is that you have, we're talking about the graph, the bell curve, whatever it might be. I think I got roasted in one of my in one of the BBC channel about how it's only a bell curve when it's symmetrical. I don't know. I think it's called a skewed graph or something. I mean, don't roast me.
School, dude,
I can't remember that stuff. But anyway, you've got too much fluctuation in your level of play, right? So let's say it is a bell curve or whatever. You're on the left-hand side of the bell curve. That goes down too far to the left. It goes all the way to in terms of overall level of play, maybe P2, but the highs are at Master or GM, right? You've got this massive fluctuation in your play, which could be a sign of lack of fundamentals, maybe not consistent fundamentals. It could be the way you play the game. You're just a very risk-oriented. Like you just say yes to everything. You don't say no to plays. It could also be that you maybe compensate for certain areas of your play with being really good in other areas. Like maybe you're very good mechanically, but then not good at understanding the game state. Like whatever it might be. Like there's ways to get around it, but you're fluctuating a lot. So that's a sign that there's problems. There's core problems that we need to address, right? And the most important thing, and that's okay. I keep saying this.
If that wasn't okay, if someone was in Diamond 3 fluctuating and stuff, and their gameplay was perfect,
that's a problem.
What the fuck?
That's a problem.
Then leagues are fundamental. That'll be a
broken game.
It'll be a shit game, actually.
It's a shit game, yeah. So you're there for a reason, but he knows that, right?
Yep.
He knows that, but he can't accept that.
Yep.
He can't accept that he is that player.
Yep.
Accept it, dude. There is no other way around it.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's so relieving when you accept it, dude. Yeah, I felt amazing.
It's like okay, man.
Yes.
Sorry to hear that you've been in Diamond for so long. You want a hug?
Yeah.
You want Nathan to come, shake your hand or something? It is what it is, man. Maybe you're not the most talented gamer in the world. Maybe you are disadvantaged. Well, there's a lot less talented players out there. There's a lot more disadvantaged players out there. It's all relative. You're comparing yourself to the best players in the world. I get that. Diamond is still at a very, very good achievement. And we're not stopping there. But going from D1 to Master, or D2 to Master, or D3 to Master, whatever, it's hard. It's very difficult.
Top of the player base.
Top of the player base, 0.001%, whatever it is.
Millions of people play the game.
So you are already at the top echelon. You're very close. So, okay, you're not where you want to be. It's taking longer than you expected. Okay, what do you want to hear? You want to hear that, poor you? I'm sorry to hear that. Not really. People are there for years. If you get from D4 to Master in 1 year, that's still great. Even in a whole year. Right? So I think you need to cut yourself some slack. I spoke about league journey all the time. You have I know that you struggle with he struggles with emotional regulation. What I think is genuinely happening, the core fundamental problem, he struggles to overcome things that are difficult. In his life, when things have gotten hard, pack it in. So he might get to D1, high D2. Shit starts to get hard, starts to get to his plateau point. He's embarrassed of his rank. He can't fathom that he's not a master tier player for whatever reason. Because he's been in Diamond for 6 months, whatever it might be. Then, makes a few misplays, gets outplayed because he's at his plateau point, rather than accepting that's where he's at, loses confidence, drops back down, and then continues the cycle. When what we need to do, Tom, you get to D2, D1. Let's just give yourself a pat in the back. Congratulations. Well done. Now let's see you lose a bunch of games because you've plateaued. Let's figure out why you're losing these games. And then let's get into the details. There is no cookie cutter. Yeah, Nathan's t-shirt. There is no Krabby Patty secret formula. Right? It's the details. It's the getting into the details. And
it's the ultimate cure.
The sooner you go through Nathan's revelation, where you accept that you're not the player you think you are, you're not as talented as you think you are, you're not as special as you think you are, the climb isn't as easy as you think it is.
It becomes so fun, dude.
The game becomes more fun.
I love it, dude.
You get to grow out a beard and everything, like Nathan.
Become old and wise.
And then magically, when you accept that you don't have something, that's when it actually comes to you. Because it will come with time. So, Tom, I have 110% belief. We believe that you can get
I believe, Tommy. Let's do it.
Right? You're going to get
Let's
there
do it,
if you follow the 3 blocks, you're getting into the reviews. You put your ego aside. You accept that you are that Diamond 3, Diamond 2 player. That's where you're at. Then you will make it. But really accept it. Like, you got to really accept that. And that's hard.
Embrace it is the
Embrace
word. And then you get excited. I'm at the base of the mountain. Here we go. I'm going to climb up. Here's my journey.
You're at the base of Mount Everest. You're at base camp. All right.
He has here. Last question is, how can I feel good at playing League when my family thinks I'm wasting time? I'm addicted that I'll end up in the hospital 4 years from now. Listening to it basically every day sucks. What should I do? Write down why you play the game, why you think it's good for you, why you want to do it in your life. You could just come down to you're actually an addict, and that's maybe a thing you that would be bad. Ideally, have the conversation with your parents. I would say most of the time the conversation wouldn't go back because I think, why is my 16-year-old son telling me video games are good? They're stuck in their ways, all that sort of stuff. And then just keep reading that piece of paper, Just be like, this is why I play the game, bam. And then you have to understand from your parents' perspective why they think that way. They
wouldn't understand or that it's in a different world. They wouldn't know that.
That's right.
League, it was a game that you can better yourself through.
I mean, it definitely would suck if you kept hearing it every day, but I feel like, a good parent that, that wants their kids to do things they enjoy. If you said to them, this is why I play the game and stuff, maybe they could understand it. Have a crack. That's a tough conversation to have. You'll probably be very uncomfortable doing that. Get used to having tough conversation. That's part of being an adult. And then just keep trucking. My parents hated me playing video games. I just kept on trucking, dude. Well, once I'm in League of Legends, I'm not thinking about that.
Do you have any other advice for Tom there?
No. The what I said at the beginning. If you can't get that mindset across, you always focus on LP. End of story. Other than that, the rest of that you nailed.
And
that.
you realize that there's some fundamental difference in decision making here.
Yeah.
And I'm determined to figure out what it is.
Yeah. And at the time, I did actually know what it is. I just had to get the execution in and break down a lot of mental blocks and narratives that I had.
Talk about your journey. You were in Diamond for
A whole year,
2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Nathan was in Diamond for 2 years.
Yeah.
Tom.
From being an ex-challenger, rank 2 player.
Rank 2 in season 3.
I was so fucking delusional.
Think about that.
Yeah.
An ex-rank 2 player stuck in Diamond for 2 years, Tom. Cut yourself some slack, man.
Yeah. All right. Next question here is from Paul. 3 camp ganking. Flashy sash slashy. Hi, Nathan and Curtis. I've enjoyed your content for a long time, but this year I've been applying your advice such as 3 blocking, reviewing, having a learning objective, and working on fundamentals. Recently hit Diamond 2 for the first time. I hit Diamond was in Season 5. I had a question for Nathan as a Rek'Sai player. That is me. I notice he is very cool with 3 camp into gank if that side is volatile. As a Shyvana player, I've noticed that if I track that the enemy started on the same side as me, and I help my 2% HP bot get a double kill as I hit 3, I will just get 3 quadranted. As a farming jungler, is it crazy to have a guideline of only help after 3 camps if we aren't matching? Because that 1 of 2 quadrants will be left up. This would really help my current learn objective of not compensating. This is obviously a jungle question, Curtis. Yes, so even with Rek'Sai, I'm very comfortable to do a full clear if there's no high percentage gank. So 3 camp ganking as a jungler is really shit if it's not high percentage, because if you're versing a farming jungler, you instantly get behind. It's not even that worth it. So I will only ever 3 camp gank if it's a very clear win condition in my game. And, you know, they're at least heavy trading a little bit. If I will never ever gank a lane 3 camp if it's neutral wave, full HP tigers with all sums. That's just you just got to clear your camps.
I feel like that's opposite to what I experience.
Really?
I feel like those 3 camp ganks mid, they cross map. They do 3 camp like blue gromp wolves, blue wolves gromp whatever, and then loop through mid back to the other side. Is
high impact.
It screws I've lost so many games off that. Just
Okay.
off that one game.
All right. Well, I wasn't thinking about mid, which is something we've talked about before.
Well, because when I think of 3 camp, that's what I think of. More through mid because it's so efficient. You're doing
3 camp in mid is better. 3 camp in side lanes is dangerous.
Yeah. You're like
okay. So Red Raptors Gromp is a riskier path
than Red Gromp Raptors.
Than No, Red Krugs Raptors.
Because
you've cleared a beautiful quadrant, right?
Red Krugs Raptors gives you so many options.
And so much experience. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Sorry, there's a difference. Yeah, so my Rek'Sai ganks, my Red Raptors Gromp gank, I have to have a high percentage gank. But yeah,
wait, what? Because 3 camp, what are you talking about? Is he talking about, when I think of 3 camp,
what 3 camp is he talking about? Let me double check.
Are you talking about like instant getting 3, like red, blue Gromp red? Or is he talking like wolves blue, like blue wolves gromp gank aside or cross map through mid?
Yeah, there's definitely different versions of 3 camps.
Because when I thought 3 camp gank, I automatically assumed that 3 camp is like,
that's not what I first thought.
Oh right,
yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Because I'm viewing it from a Rek'Sai lens.
Rek'Sai still does that. I swear I get ganged by Rek'Sai all the time doing that on their blue side. They do Red Krugs Raptors.
Yep.
And then cross map through mid. I get that gank all the time.
Okay.
Like I expect that every game.
Okay.
That's like the gank part I expect.
Yeah. You're a good mid laner, Curtis.
No, because I've died so many times. I refuse to die.
So he says, as a Shyvana player, notice if I track the enemy jungler started on the same side as me. Well, as a Shyvana, I mean, level 3 ganking mid, that's not going to work.
I think what he's talking about is, so he's talking about if he's on the same side, say he's Shyvana.
Yeah.
And the enemy's Rek'Sai. And then Rek'Sai, say Shyvana's blue side, Rek'Sai's red side. And then Rek'Sai starts blue. And then Rek'Sai does blue, Gromp, red, gank top.
And then his bot side's open.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, and then he's saying that like...
Yeah, no, you don't help that. You just full clear, get level 4. It's too important, Shyvana. As Shyvana, so this is a simple Shyvana. I mean,
like you don't vertical, you don't clear his wolves. Is that what you're saying? What are you saying?
Yeah.
As the Shyvana, you just full clear up.
Yeah, like well, your general path in for Shyvana is path to a lane with priority and full clear.
Yep.
Simple as it has to be. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And then, if you help the lane with priority, then you're only there for a counter gank. Other than that,
So his fear is that he's going to get 3 camped as the Rek'Sai or 3 quadrant as
Yeah,
Shyvana.
so I think he's scared that he's going to get...
3 quadrant as the Shyvana. Like
as a
Rek'Sai's going to
Shyvana.
go to his top side.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. It's like, it sounds like he wants to do 3 camps and then help his bot line that's heavy trade and stuff. Yeah, no, it's not. Again, we'd have to get specific, Paul. It's just not clear enough, again, the way that
Yeah,
it's structured.
3 camp is a very
There's
broad
lots
term.
of there's lots of different things, and it just depends on the way game state. But
The lanes that are in there.
simple general advice is path the lane with priority. Look to get a full clear off because you're going to prevent
He
getting.
needs to
invaded
come
and
to
walk
your
through.
first jungle clear.
Yeah, he does. Or join Soul 2 at least.
Or John's all too.
All right, I think that's it for Mailbag today. Anything to note here, Curtis, for this episode today? Final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I really want to get off my chest is that one of the guys commented on my I had a day where I tilt queued.
Yep.
And I streamed my tilt queue.
Yep.
Right?
This is on your Discord down MLA.
On my Discord. And it's funny because I had a conversation with them after,
Mm.
and they all thought it was like so interesting because it's like you're someone. Obviously, they think we're like invincible solo queue, like mentals, like
No.
And seeing that was so refreshing. It's like I love that. I
Yeah.
love that you like. It's refreshing to see that you struggle with the same things that we struggle with, and I wanted to share that. It's like we don't breeze through solo queue mentally. Like we don't. It's not like we don't have mental blocks or we don't struggle with certain things. Like we have moments where we tilt queue or we don't stick to the 3 block or we mess up and we don't do a good quality review or whatever it might be. And this is stuff that we're in it with you together. Everything that we're teaching here is things that we are passionate about because it's worked for us and we care about LP and winning as well. Like we care about climbing the ladder. And these are tools. Like the whole point of playing for improvement is because that's the way to climb. It's not because that sounds sexy.
Or it's like some special little. It's a
Special
special
group.
way to play League of Legends.
It's because it's the only way.
It's
Like
the only
really
way,
reliably.
yeah.
If you're not talented, right? Say we're not talented. That's it. It's the only way. So I want to caveat. Like people forget. Like sometimes it feels like we're pulling shit out of our ass.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, this is stuff that's real because we care a lot about solo queue and we also struggle. I mean, solo queue's hard.
It's
just
hard,
so
dude.
hard.
That's great.
Like, I've been challenged of like 7 seasons or 8 seasons.
And the
like,
game's still hard.
it's still so every season it's just a grind.
Yeah.
It's so hard. And I love that. And I think that it's important that we are open about that. And
Yeah.
we and that's why we do everything. Because it works. And that's the only thing that's gonna make you get better. And last thing I will want to say, small little quick side note. I think I spoke to you about this off camera, the micro thing. Where what good quality micro actually is.
Yeah.
So I'll have to do a clip. Maybe we'll do a clip or a video at some point talking about this. But I've been really passionate about improving micro. I did a video on how to improve micro. And if I were to go back in time, I would add one thing. Very simply, I want to do a quick TLDR here for people out there. Something for laners, specifically the laners. If you're a top laner, mid, bot. Typically, when you hear good quality micro, what do you think of? You think of like really like a lot of clicks, right? A lot of clicks.
Good movement, beautiful movement.
Like a lot of rapid movement. Like they're clicking close to their character. Like it's just a lot of wiggling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's one element of it. Really good quality micro, from what I've seen, is actually less so a lot of clicks and a lot of spamming and stuff. It's a combination of short and long clicks. So if you watch any very good, like maybe outside of Faker, but like because Faker's kind of an anomaly, but like any other very high, really good player in EU or Korea, they do a combination of long and short clicks. So you watch, say, Magi Felix, he will do like a long click and then a very short rapid corner. Like I view the movements kind of like, if I think, I try to think things visually. If we were to draw the path of what the clicks would look
it's like Morse code.
Yeah, kind of.
Dash,
it's a dash.
dot,
yeah,
dash,
spot on.
dot, dot.
Dash, dot, dot, dash, dot, dot. So you watch them, and it's so... When you verse someone who does this really well, it's very hard to deal with. Dash, dot, dot. And then they might do dot, dot, dash, dash, 2 dashes, dot, dot. But it's always a dash with like a small click. And the reason this is superior to constant clicks is because you're actually maximizing distance. And there was a really good example that 610 in my Discord highlighted. It was of Zeus. Probably one of the best mechanical players in the world. One of the best players in the world, actually, overall. And he was trying to escape from a Nidalee. And the Nidalee was right behind him, ready to throw a spear. And what he did with his movements, they weren't short clicks, but they weren't long clicks. He did like medium clicks. And you might just think, oh, you know, that's normal. No. The click length was the perfect combination of not so long that his movements were too elongated and long, but they were not so short that he wasn't moving anywhere, because if he's moving side to side, he's actually not covering distance. They were like a medium-sized click, which actually allows him to both simultaneously move his character an actual distance upwards vertically, but also alternate his movements left to right. And so Zeus is a player that's mastered the combination of short and long clicks, an alternation between short and long clicks, to overwhelm the enemy mental stack, and you don't know where they're going to move and how they're going to move. And I think Felix is also a player that is very good at this. And it doesn't look sexy, but it's actually the most effective input. It's the most effective form of micro, in my opinion. So if you're a laner out there and you're watching any high level player, very, very high level player, we're talking like the best of the best, keep an eye out for the way they click. If you can get their point of view, that's the best. Watch like the way they click and how it's like it's long and then a short turn, sharp turn, and just keep an eye out for that. I think it's a nice little interesting thing to keep an eye out for.
Great. Cool. Learning how to macro at the end of the podcast. That's what I like to hear on the
Lovely
Solo Queue Improvement podcast. We'll see you guys on the Rift.